The security guard's hand was already on her elbow when the HR director spoke the words that would end Simone Carter's employment at Hensley Capital Management. "Pack your desk. You're done." The morning sunlight cut through the 42nd floor windows at sharp angles, illuminating the faces of colleagues who'd stopped mid-stride to watch. 23 people in the open floor plan. Simone had counted them without meaning to. 23 witnesses to what Michelle Dawson, Senior Vice President of Human Resources, had decided would be her humiliation. The dress code is outlined in your employee handbook, Ms. Carter. Section 4, subsection 3. Professional attire is non-negotiable. Michelle's voice carried across the trading floor, intentionally loud, deliberately public. She stood with her arms crossed, pearl necklace catching the light, her expression the particular kind of satisfaction that comes from exercising power over someone who cannot fight back. Simone stood near her desk in a navy blue blazer, cream silk blouse, and tailored trousers. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun. Her jewelry consisted of pearl stud earrings and a simple watch. On her feet, she wore black leather flats. The flats were the problem. Heels are required for all female employees in client-facing roles, Michelle continued. This is your third violation in 2 weeks. We've been more than patient. Simone did not respond. She met Michelle's gaze for exactly 3 seconds, then looked down at the box the security guard had placed on her desk. Her face revealed nothing. No anger, no fear, no pleading. This silence seemed to irritate Michelle more than any defense would have. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Simone began placing items into the box: a framed photograph, a coffee mug, a small succulent plant she'd kept alive for 4 years. "I asked you a question." "I heard you." Simone's voice was quiet, measured. She placed a notebook in the box, then a pen set. Behind Michelle, Marcus Chen from the derivatives desk whispered something to his colleague. They both looked uncomfortable. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Even public firings had a script. Defiance, tears, excuses. Simone was giving them nothing. "You can send your final paycheck to my home address," Simone said. "You have it on file." She picked up the box. The security guard, a young man named Dennis who'd always greeted her warmly in the lobby, looked like he wanted to apologize. She gave him the smallest nod. "It's okay. You're just doing your job." The walk to the elevator took 32 steps. Simone counted those too, not because she was anxious, but because counting created distance, a clinical separation between emotion and action. Michelle followed her to the elevator bank, perhaps disappointed that her performance had yielded so little reaction. "This industry requires a certain standard, Miss Carter. Presentation matters. Perhaps at your next position you'll take that more seriously." The elevator doors opened. Simone stepped inside. "Goodbye, Michelle." The doors closed on Michelle's face, erasing it like a problem solved. Alone in the descending elevator, Simone's expression didn't change. She checked her watch. 9:47 in the morning. She had an appointment at noon. Before that, she needed to make 3 phone calls. The lobby doors opened to a humid June day in downtown Chicago. Simone walked to her car, placed the box in the trunk, and sat in the driver's seat for 60 seconds of absolute stillness. Then she picked up her phone and began making calls. If this story resonates with you, share it. Stories like these matter. Black Journal Stories exists because dignity deserves a platform. Click subscribe to make sure you never miss what happens when silence speaks louder than words. 48 hours earlier, Simone had been sitting in the same office, same floor, different context. "These projections are conservative," she'd said, sliding the presentation across the conference table to Michelle Dawson and Gregory Hensley, the firm's managing partner. "We're looking at a 16% increase in the emerging markets portfolio, but that assumes current stability in the Asian tech sector. If we diversify into the healthcare subsidiaries I've outlined here, we could push that to 22, maybe 24%. Gregory had studied the numbers with the careful attention of a man who'd built a fortune on knowing which analyst to trust. Michelle had studied Simone with the careful attention of a woman who'd built a career on knowing which employees to diminish. "This is solid work," Gregory had said. "Really solid. How long have you been with us now?" 4 years. 4 years as an analyst, and you're producing senior-level strategy." He'd looked at Michelle. "We should be talking about advancement here." Michelle's smile had been plastic. "Let's see how the quarterly numbers play out first. Simone's talented, absolutely, but she's still learning the client-facing aspects of the role." Client-facing? Gregory had looked confused. She built the Jacobson pitch that landed us $8 million. And she did it beautifully, behind the scenes. Michelle's emphasis on those last 3 words was surgical. When it came time to present, we needed someone with more polished presentation skills. Simone had said nothing during this exchange. She'd learned early that certain battles couldn't be won in the moment. Gregory had nodded slowly, his attention already moving to the next meeting on his calendar. "Well, keep up the excellent work, Simone. This is the kind of analysis that makes us competitive." That conversation had happened on a Wednesday. By Friday, Simone had received her first official warning about dress code violations. The warning memo had been specific. Female employees in client-facing roles must wear closed-toe shoes with a minimum 2-inch heel. Flats, while professional in appearance, do not meet our institutional standards for executive presence. Simone had read the memo 3 times. Nowhere in her 4 years at Hensley Capital had this rule been mentioned. She'd checked the employee handbook. Section 4, subsection 3, did mention professional attire. It did not mention heels. She'd worn heels the next Monday, 3-inch pumps that made her feet ache by noon. At 2:15, she'd been in the file room searching for archived client contracts when Michelle appeared in the doorway. "How are the shoes working out?" Simone had turned, file in hand. "They're fine." "Good. I've been thinking about your presentation skills. Gregory mentioned that you might be ready for more visibility, but I'm not sure you understand how important appearance is in this industry." "I dress professionally." "You dress adequately. There's a difference." Michelle had stepped closer, her voice dropping to the register of false concern. "I'm trying to help you, Simone. This business, it has expectations. The clients we serve, they're looking for a certain type of professional. You're smart, I'll give you that, but smart isn't always enough." The next day, Simone had worn flats. Weeks earlier, before any of this began, there had been a board meeting. Hensley Capital's board of directors met quarterly. 8 members, all external to daily operations, all wealthy enough that their advisory role was more prestige than necessity. They reviewed financials, approved major expenditures, and provided strategic guidance to Gregory and his executive team. Simone had never attended a board meeting. Analysts didn't. That was the territory of vice presidents and C-suite executives. But 3 months ago, Gregory had approached her desk with an unusual request. "The board wants a deep dive on our algorithmic trading platform, not the surface-level stuff. They want to understand the architecture, the risk management protocols, the competitive advantages. I know you worked on the implementation team." "I led the implementation team." "Right, exactly. So here's the thing. I need you to present at the next board meeting. Michelle usually handles the analyst presentations, but this is too technical for a general overview. They need someone who actually built the system." Simone had felt something shift in that moment. Board meetings were visibility. Visibility was currency. "When is it?" "June 15th. Mark your calendar." She had marked it. She had also spent the next 8 weeks preparing a presentation that would demonstrate not just her technical knowledge, but her strategic vision for where the firm could go. June 15th was 3 days away when Michelle delivered the dress code warning, 2 days away when the second warning arrived, 1 day away when Simone wore flats and was fired in front of the entire trading floor. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock. Simone's firing occurred at 9:47 in the morning. Timing, she thought, as she drove away from the Hensley Capitol building for what everyone assumed was the last time, was everything. At noon, Simone sat in a cafe 3 blocks from her apartment. Her phone rang. "Miss Carter, this is Robert Jameson. I'm the board chair for Hensley Capitol." "Mr. Jameson, good to hear from you. I'm calling because we have a board meeting this afternoon and I understand there's been some kind of situation. Gregory just informed me that you're no longer with the firm. He seemed surprised I was calling you directly." "I imagine he was." "Your presentation was scheduled for 2:30. Obviously, given the circumstances, Gregory wants to postpone or have someone else cover the material. But here's my problem, Miss Carter. I've reviewed the prep materials you sent last week. That analysis didn't come from someone who just understands algorithms. That came from someone who understands market philosophy. Do you follow me?" "I do. So I need to ask you a direct question. Do you want to present today?" Simone looked out the cafe window. A mother walked by pushing a stroller. 2 men in business suits argued about a parking spot. Life continued in its ordinary chaos, indifferent to private revolutions. "Yes," she said, "I want to present." "Then you'll present. I'll handle Gregory. Be there at 2:15. Use the executive entrance. I'll have you cleared." "Mr. Jameson, I should tell you, I know why you were fired, Miss Carter. I know exactly why. That's why I'm making this call." He hung up. Simone sat very still. Then she went home, changed into a different suit, and selected a pair of heels that made a statement with each step. The executive entrance to Hensley Capitol was marble and brass, and quietly intimidating. Simone had never used it before. The receptionist, a woman named Claire, who'd always been kind during Simone's 4 years, looked up with barely concealed shock. "Simone, I thought, I have a 2:15 appointment with the board." Claire checked her computer, confusion crossing her face. "It shows you here, but your building access was terminated this morning." "I know. Mr. Jameson is expecting me." The elevator to the executive floor required a key card Simone no longer possessed. Claire made a call. 2 minutes later, Robert Jameson himself appeared in the lobby. He was 73, silver-haired, with the kind of posture that suggested military service in his youth. His handshake was firm. "Miss Carter, thank you for coming. Thank you for the invitation." They rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened on the 45th floor, 3 floors above where Simone had worked, in a territory she'd never seen, the space was different, quieter, the carpet thicker, the art on the walls actually worth looking at. "The others are gathering," Jameson said. "Gregory is managing expectations. He thinks you're coming to drop off your presentation materials for someone else to present. And you didn't correct him. I thought the correction would be more effective coming from you." He paused outside the boardroom doors. "Miss Carter, I'm going to be frank. 3 weeks ago, I received an anonymous email. It contained documentation of 8 separate instances where Michelle Dawson had sabotaged female analysts, reassigned their projects, excluded them from meetings, created impossible standards that existed nowhere in company policy. All 8 analysts were Black women. All 8 eventually left the firm." Simone's expression didn't change. "The email," Jameson continued, "also contained something else. A detailed forensic analysis of trading patterns that suggest someone in our firm has been front-running client orders. Small amounts, carefully hidden, but over 3 years, totaling approximately $4.2 million in improper gains. The analysis was brilliant, PhD-level quantitative work. It came from someone who understood our systems intimately. That sounds serious. It is. The email was sent from an encrypted account, untraceable, but the analysis was signed with initials, SC. He looked at her directly. "I've spent 3 weeks investigating quietly. Everything in that email was accurate, including the part about Michelle Dawson being the one doing the front running." Simone met his gaze, said nothing. "So here's what's going to happen. Jameson said. "You're going to walk into that boardroom. You're going to present your analysis of our algorithmic trading platform. And when you're done, we're going to have a conversation about the future of this firm. Are you ready?" "I'm ready." He opened the doors. The boardroom was glass and chrome and held 8 of the wealthiest people in Chicago. They sat around a table that probably cost more than Simone's annual salary. Gregory Hensley sat at one end, looking confused and uncomfortable. Michelle Dawson sat 3 seats down, her expression frozen in professional neutrality. At the far end of the table, a presentation screen glowed blue, waiting for content. Every head turned when Simone walked in. Gregory stood up. "Robert, I think there's been some confusion. Simone is no longer—" "Miss Carter is here at my invitation," Jameson said. "She's presenting as scheduled. But she was terminated this morning for—" "I'm aware of the termination. The board is interested in hearing her presentation regardless of her employment status. We can discuss the circumstances afterward." Jameson's voice carried the weight of a man who chaired boards and expected his directions to be followed. Gregory sat down slowly. Michelle's hand, resting on the table, had formed a fist. Simone walked to the presentation podium. She connected her laptop. The screen behind her shifted from blue to black, then displayed a single image, the Hensley Capital logo, overlaid with the title Algorithmic Trading, Architecture, Ethics, and Competitive Future. "Good afternoon," she said. Her voice was calm, clear, pitched to carry authority without effort. "My name is Simone Carter. For the past 4 years, I've served as a quantitative analyst here, and I led the team that designed and implemented our current algorithmic trading platform. Today, I'm going to show you not just how the system works, but where it's vulnerable, where it's powerful, and where it could take this firm in the next 5 years. She advanced the slide. A complex flowchart appeared, showing data pathways and decision nodes. This is the current architecture. It processes approximately 42,000 trades per day, with an average execution time of 3.1 milliseconds. That puts us in the top 15% of mid-sized capital management firms. But here's what the numbers don't show. For the next 40 minutes, Simone took the board through a journey of technical excellence and strategic vision. She explained complex quantitative concepts in language that was precise but accessible. She highlighted vulnerabilities in the system, not to criticize, but to demonstrate her depth of understanding. She proposed enhancements that would increase both speed and security, and she did it all while standing in heels that cost less than the pen Michelle was holding, wearing a suit from a department store rather than a designer boutique, with her hair pulled back in the same simple style that had been deemed unprofessional 48 hours earlier. The board members asked questions. She answered them. All of them. When it was over, there was a moment of silence. Then Robert Jameson began to clap. The other board members joined him. Gregory looked stunned. Michelle looked ill. "Thank you, Miss Carter," Jameson said. "That was exceptional. Now, if you'll wait outside for just a moment, the board needs to discuss some matters in executive session." Simone gathered her laptop and walked toward the door. As she passed Michelle's chair, their eyes met for half a second. Michelle's face had gone pale. In the hallway, Simone sat on a leather bench and checked her phone. She had 17 messages. Most were from former colleagues who'd heard about her firing and wanted to express sympathy. One was from her mother, asking if she was okay. She replied to her mother first, "I'm fine. Better than fine. I'll call you tonight." 23 minutes later, the boardroom doors opened. Robert Jameson stepped out, followed by another board member, a woman named Patricia Okonkwo, who ran a healthcare investment fund. "Miss Carter," Patricia said, "would you join us again?" The scene Simone walked into had changed. Gregory stood in the corner, his face carefully blank. Michelle was still seated, but her posture had collapsed inward. "Miss Carter," Jameson began, "the board has been discussing your presentation, along with some additional matters that have come to our attention. First, I want to make clear that your termination this morning was improper, unjustified, and potentially discriminatory. The dress code policy cited by HR does not exist in any official company documentation. We've reviewed the handbook thoroughly. Michelle shifted in her seat. Second, Jameson continued, the board has been conducting an investigation into trading irregularities. That investigation has concluded. Michelle, would you like to explain to everyone here how you managed to front-run client orders for 3 years without detection? The room went silent. Michelle's voice, when it came, was barely audible. I don't know what you're talking about. No? Patricia Okonkwo opened a folder and began reading. June 2023, client order for 15,000 shares of Medtronic at market open, executed at 9:32. Your personal account shows a purchase of 2,000 shares at 9:29, 3 minutes before the client order. Sold at 9:35 for a profit of $8,000. Should I continue? Because I have 47 more examples here. Gregory's face had gone from confused to horrified. Michelle, we've already contacted the SEC, Jameson said. They'll be filing charges within the week. Wire fraud, securities fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. You'll be surrendering your licenses, obviously. The board has also voted to terminate your employment effective immediately and to pursue civil recovery of all improper gains. Michelle stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You can't. This is based on what? Anonymous accusations? It's based on forensic analysis of trading records, Patricia said. Analysis that was provided to us by someone with intimate knowledge of our systems, someone whose work we had independently verified by outside counsel. Michelle's eyes found Simone. Understanding arrived like a physical blow. You, she whispered, you did this. Simone's expression remained neutral. I presented an analysis to the board. What they chose to do with it was their decision. After I fired you? Michelle stopped herself, but it was too late. After you fired her for made-up dress code violations? Jameson's voice had gone cold. After you systematically sabotaged 8 talented analysts? After you created a hostile environment designed to push out anyone you perceived as competition? Yes, Miss Carter provided us with documentation. Documentation that revealed not just your theft, but your pattern of discrimination. Security appeared in the doorway. The same guard, Dennis, who'd escorted Simone out that morning. His face was carefully professional, but his eyes met Simone's for just a second. She saw something there. Satisfaction, maybe. Justice. Miss Dawson, Jameson said, you need to leave now. Michelle walked to the door, her heels clicking against the floor. At the threshold, she turned back. You'll never make it in this industry. You're too... Careful. Patricia Okonkwo said quietly. Every word you say right now is being recorded. I suggest you save whatever you're about to say for your attorney. Michelle left. The room exhaled. Jameson turned to Simone. Miss Carter, the board would like to offer you a position, Vice President of Quantitative Strategy, reporting directly to the Executive Committee. Salary $320,000, plus performance bonuses. You'll have a team of 4 analysts, your choice of who to hire. You'll also have a seat at the monthly strategy meetings and input on all major trading decisions. Simone looked at Gregory, who still seemed to be processing everything that had happened. Mr. Hensley? Gregory cleared his throat. I should have seen it. What Michelle was doing, I should have paid attention. I'm sorry. And going forward? Going forward, we implement the recommendations in your presentation. And we do better, all of us. Simone turned back to Jameson. I accept the position, with one condition. Name it. I want to review our hiring practices, our retention metrics, our advancement pathways for women and people of color, not because I want to make demands or create problems, but because this firm loses talent when it should be cultivating it. If we fix that, we don't just become more ethical, we become more competitive. Patricia Okonkwo smiled. I like her. So do I, Jameson said. Condition accepted. Can you start Monday? I can start tomorrow. If you're still watching this, you understand something that Michelle Dawson never learned. Power doesn't announce itself. Dignity doesn't beg for recognition. And intelligence is always taking notes. Black Journal Stories brings you these narratives because someone needs to. Hit subscribe. Not because we ask, but because stories like this deserve to be heard. The next morning, Simone arrived at Hensley Capital at 7:45. She rode the elevator to the 45th floor. Her new office had her name on the door, printed on a temporary placard that would be replaced with something more permanent by the end of the week. The view from the 45th floor was different, wider. You could see the lake from here, stretching out blue and indifferent to the small dramas of human ambition. At 8:30, her first meeting was with HR, the actual director, not Michelle, to discuss hiring her team. At 10, she met with the compliance department to review trading protocols. At noon, Gregory invited her to lunch with a potential client, a pension fund manager who wanted to understand their algorithmic capabilities. "I thought you could explain it better than I could," Gregory said. At 2 o'clock, she was back at her desk when her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Jennifer Payne. I worked at Hensley 3 years ago. I heard what happened. Thank you." Another text 5 minutes later. Different number. "Keisha Washington. I left in 2022. I heard Michelle is gone. I heard you're the reason. Thank you." By the end of the day, she had 6 messages from women who'd left the firm under Michelle's management. Women who'd been told they weren't polished enough, professional enough, executive enough. Women who'd taken their talents elsewhere because staying had become untenable. Simone replied to each one personally. "Thank you for reaching out. I hope you're doing well. You deserved better then. We'll do better now." That evening, she called her mother. "So you got your job back?" her mother asked. "Better. I got a different job. A better one." "And the woman who fired you?" "She's dealing with the consequences of her choices." Her mother was quiet for a moment. "You know what your grandmother used to say? Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy." "I remember. You did good, baby. You did real good." 3 weeks later, Simone sat in on her first board meeting as Vice President of Quantitative Strategy. She presented an updated analysis of the trading platform, along with recommendations for expansion into international markets. When she finished, Robert Jameson looked at the other board members. Questions? There were several. Simone answered them all. At the end of the meeting, as people gathered their materials, Patricia Okonkwo approached Simone. "Can I ask you something? That email you sent, the one with all the documentation about Michelle. You knew it would end up here. You knew we'd investigate. Why not just come forward directly? Why the anonymity?" Simone considered the question. "Because if I'd walked into your office and accused a senior vice president of fraud and discrimination, I would have been dismissed as a disgruntled employee. But anonymous documentation? That had to be taken seriously, verified independently. The truth needed to stand on its own, without being attached to whoever delivered it." Patricia nodded slowly. "You play the long game. I play the smart game." "There's a difference?" Simone smiled. "Not if you're doing it right." 6 months after that, Hensley Capital posted record quarterly earnings. The algorithmic trading platform had been expanded and enhanced based on Simone's recommendations. 3 new analysts had been hired, 2 women, 1 man, all chosen for their talent rather than their ability to fit a specific mold. Michelle Dawson had been charged with 17 counts of securities fraud. Her trial was pending. Her career was over. And Simone Carter sat in an office on the 45th floor, building something that went beyond personal vindication. She was building a culture, a standard, a message that said, underestimate people at your own risk. On a Tuesday morning in December, she received an email from a young woman applying for an analyst position. The email was professionally written, well-researched, clearly from someone talented. At the bottom, a single line stood out. I'm reaching out because I read about the changes at Hensley Capital. I want to work somewhere that values intelligence over appearance. Simone scheduled an interview. Because that's how change happens. Not with grand pronouncements or dramatic gestures, but with small decisions made consistently, with doors opened intentionally, with standards upheld quietly. That evening, Simone left the office at 6:30. She wore flats, the comfortable kind that let you think about work instead of pain. She walked through the lobby where Dennis still worked security, and he nodded at her with genuine respect now, not just politeness. "Have a good evening, Miss Carter." "You too, Dennis." Outside, Chicago was cold and bright and indifferent. But Simone had learned something about indifference. Sometimes it was the best possible condition, because indifference meant the world wasn't against you. It was simply waiting to see what you would do. And what Simone did was exactly what she'd always done. She paid attention, she documented, she analyzed, she waited for the right moment, and then she moved. Years from now, someone might ask her about the day she was fired from Hensley Capital, about the humiliation of being escorted out by security, the public spectacle of her termination, and Simone would smile, the way people smile when they know something others don't. "That wasn't the end of my story," she would say. "That was the beginning of my leverage." Because here's what Michelle Dawson never understood. Here's what every person who mistakes quietness for weakness fails to grasp. Silence isn't surrender. Patience isn't passivity. And dignity, real dignity, doesn't need to announce itself. It simply waits for its moment, and then it speaks with a voice that cannot be ignored. Simone Carter's moment had come at 2:15 on a June afternoon, in a boardroom 3 floors above where she'd been fired, wearing the same professional attire that had been deemed inadequate just hours earlier. And when she spoke, the entire structure of Hensley Capital had shifted to accommodate the truth she carried. That's not revenge. That's justice. And justice, unlike revenge, builds something in its wake. It builds standard. It builds culture. It builds a world where talent gets recognized, where discrimination gets consequences, where silence can be the most powerful statement of all. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of something you've faced or someone you've known, share it. Black Journal Stories exists because these narratives matter, because dignity deserves documentation, because every person who's been underestimated deserves to see themselves vindicated, even if it's only in story. Subscribe to this channel. Not because we need you to, but because you deserve to see what happens when intelligence meets patience, when preparation meets opportunity, when silence finally speaks, and when it does, the whole world listens.